For my second year computer graphics assignment, I wanted to create a simulation of part of my university. Each room contains a simple transformation animation. In this video, I'll go through a few of the techniques I used to create the program, as well as go over the processes and challenges I faced during its creation. In order to have plenty of reference points to go off, I took many photographs of the areas I wanted to recreate within the 3D space. As you can see from some of the photos, light comes in from the windows outside the building, but I wanted to focus solely on the interior. During the recreation of some of the 3D objects using Blender, I found that recreating every object in the university's J-block was going to take a considerable amount of time, but I did not want my scene to be lacking objects. I decided to simply recreate the hallway that leads to the main block and populate the other classrooms and hallways with animation. I looked through the photos for reference plenty of times to be sure that all objects that were visible were also visible in my scene. I also measured some of the rooms to be sure I could recreate each object to the correct scale. It is important to remember in games design that adding detail to your levels may make them more immersive, but can create a lot more work for something a player may not even notice. If this level were part of a first-person shooter, for example, it would likely take the player seconds to navigate this hallway. However, for an adventure game or a walking simulator, high levels of detail are quite important to immerse the player fully into the world you've created. All objects that were rendered in my OpenGL program were created from scratch using Blender. I have had some experience using Blender in the past, but not usually to this level of detail. I've included a few links I found helpful in the description when first learning the software. I wanted to keep all objects simple and in a similar style, which is why I mainly use cubes and planes for most of the scenery. The snap tool proved quite useful when creating these objects, as it allowed me to keep walls and other objects symmetrical when needed. OpenGL is capable of loading textures and texture maps from the C++ code. However, to make things easier, I exported all objects that were textured in my Blender scene as .obj files. Their texture information can be read in OpenGL using the mtl file, which is generated with the obj file. All textures were created in Blender using the Shading tab. Most of these textures I had to recreate myself, as I did not have access to the original images posted around the campus. I used GIMP to edit all images and was able to create specular normal maps using the software as well. Some of the textures I was able to source from textures.com, which is a free-to-use website. Much of the code used in my assignment was adapted from tutorials provided by my course and online tutorials, which I have linked in the description. Objects are loaded into the scene through the use of the source file and are then rendered in the render scene function. Some objects use materials to provide ambient, diffuse, specular, and exponent information for the specific objects. This means that light can reflect differently off these specific objects, as well as having a specific color assigned to the mesh. These objects I imported separately from Blender so that they could all be grouped into their material types. Vertex and fragment shaders are used in this program to handle the rendering of all objects and light in the scene. Lighting proved to be one of the hardest parts of the assignment for me. I wanted each light object in the scene to be a point in which light is rendered. Doing so, however, would often cause the scene to look unnatural or too bright. In the end, I found that blending the white light with a very light blue diffuse colored light gave the scene a nicer look. I think there is room for improvement here, but the scene is well lit and not too bright now. I was able to make specific objects appear as if they were giving off more light by increasing the ambient and lowering the exponent values of the object's material. So, although the object has no light attached to it, it gives the illusion it is giving off more light. Transparent objects in my scene were rendered using the GL-blend function. Although OpenGL can render baked animations loaded from .fbx files, I chose to only include simple transformation animations in my scene. Each animated object was loaded in separately and transformed to its required location. Then, rotation and translation matrices are applied to the object to move them. Booleans and if statements were used for sequence animations, such as the rocket ship.